Hello everyone. So I am working on this little hat for myself. I have done this pattern 3 times now. The first 2 were gifts for other people, and now I'm finally working on making one for myself. I really like this pattern. I got it off of Pearl Soho. It's a free pattern. It does use very tiny needles and yarn, and it takes a little while. It's not a quick knit. In fact, I was in between, so when I first when I first finished my second hat of this pattern, I had always intended on making a hat for myself, but I needed a break. I needed something like super quick, instant gratification, or as instant as it can get when knitting things for yourself. So I went with something super chunky and really easy, which is the hat that I'm currently wearing. And this was a very easy hat to make. It took me about 2 hours and I was done, and it felt great, and I was really happy to have a hat that I made that I didn't have to take a couple weeks to make. So the last hat that I made in this pattern took me about 3 weeks. And I think the one before that too. I don't know how long I've had on this hat. I think it was right before Christmas that I started. I kept messing up at the very beginning, so I ended up restarting it 3 times, which was a little bit frustrating. Anyways, this is not a video about knitting. This is actually going to be a video about journaling, but I thought I would just do some knitting while talking about journaling, and hopefully I can talk and knit at the same time. So one of the questions I get asked very consistently is, what do I journal about and what is my routine? So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I actually made a video about such topics a couple of years ago, so I don't think much has changed. I'll post a link down below to that video, but just as a refresher, I think my biggest takeaway in that video, at least, was write like no one's reading, dance like no one's dancing, write like no one's reading. So just write. So it doesn't have to be profound or artistic or creative or coherent. It can be nonsense. It could be lists. It can be what you are doing in that moment, what you are seeing and hearing and smelling, what you did that day, what you hope to do that day, what the temperature is, your grocery list, your to-do list, just anything at all that gets you writing, because that's the habit that needs to be developed in order to journal. And I think so often, myself included, have been kind of apprehensive to start journaling. At least this is something that I experienced a lot in high school when I was journaling. Not that consistently. It would take me like a year to finish a journal. I was always really petrified to journal because I wanted it to be perfect, and I wanted it to be creative, and I wanted it to be profound, and I wanted it to be more like a book of my life and my experiences with deep thoughts all the time. And that really stopped me from writing a lot. I kind of let that go. I don't know what changed. I think it was more recently, like within the last 5 years, that I just let all of that go and decided, you know what, the fact is I really enjoy writing, and it doesn't have to be anything. It's the action of writing that I enjoy the most. That's what I get out of journaling. I love feeling the paper. I love hearing the nib or the pencil on the paper. I like seeing the line go down. It's the whole experience that really does it for me. And so it doesn't matter anymore what I write. Now, most of the time, I think my journaling has kind of evolved to more of a, just any thought that I have, anything that comes to mind. And sometimes those are thoughts about what I want to do that day, or thoughts about what I did do that day, or thoughts about how I'm feeling, or the things that I have anxiety about, or the things that I am looking forward to, or dreams that I have, whether like sleeping dreams or life dreams, you know, goals and such. So really it's just everything. Sometimes I write stories, sometimes I write poetry, but most of it is really, really mundane. I think that the majority of people would be really bored and maybe a little disappointed with my journals, because they would be kind of boring and mundane. I do talk a lot about stationery, especially if I'm writing with a new pencil or pen, or writing in a new journal. That's always really exciting, and it's something that I like to talk about and analyze. One of the things that I really am interested in is how long it takes me to get through a certain, like an ink cartridge. How many pages can I use on a single ink cartridge? Or how long does it take me to use up a pencil? How long does it take me to use up a candle? Because generally I write in the mornings when I first wake up. It's just, that is the routine that really has worked for me. I wake up, make my coffee, I light a candle because usually it's dark and I don't like bright lights in the dark. And a candle is just a really lovely thing to set the tone. So I light my candle, I sip my coffee, and I journal. And usually, if I don't have to rush out the door, I have about a solid hour of writing. And then if I am working from home, I will go back and do a little writing here and there throughout the day, and sometimes before bed. But I would say the most journaling that gets done is in the morning when I first wake up. It's such a big part of my existence that I have to admit, I do get a little like discombobulated, disheveled, cranky even, if I don't get that morning routine with my coffee and my journal and my candlelight. It definitely throws me off a little bit. But I'm learning to just let that, it doesn't have to happen. I have plenty of days where it does. So take those reroutes a little bit more gracefully. Let's see, I don't think there was anything more that I wanted to say. I think it's just, you know, that actually, so I think in my last video about journaling, the biggest takeaway, like I already said at the very beginning of this video, was write like no one's reading. I think my new biggest takeaway is just write, because we're trying to develop the habit of writing and enjoy it. So it doesn't matter what you're writing about. You could be writing your ABCs, or the lazy dog jumps over, what is it? The brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Wow, I just forgot that sentence completely. Anyways, or practicing penmanship. It's just the action of writing and developing that habit and getting over that fear perhaps of messing up a journal, or saying the wrong things, or not being an artistic, incredible writer that, you know, is book worthy, I suppose. I have discovered that talking and knitting at the same time is actually really nice for me. I have a lot less anxiety about saying the right thing, or making sure I said all the things that I want to say, or leave out the things I don't want to say. The words just seem to flow out of my mouth a lot more fluidly than they do when I'm just sitting in front of a camera. Maybe that's because looking at a camera still feels a little bit unnatural and awkward, but sitting here talking to myself while knitting is totally normal. So anyway, I wanted to talk about journaling and setting up spaces and the importance of setting up spaces. Now, physically, when I say space, I am referring to not just the place where you're sitting, but also the actual journal itself, that journaling space. And that journaling space is the right journal, the right paper, the right pen. So finding objects, finding these writing tools that are really inspiring, because if you're not inspired to use them, you're just not gonna write, or you're not gonna want to write, or when you do write, it will feel really forced and maybe feel a little miserable because the pen sucks, or the paper is horrific, or you don't like the look of the journal, or you don't like the look of the pen. Like, these things can be really important, and that's okay. Also, I think that setting up the bigger space outside of ourselves is really important as well. For me, my go-to space is right here at this very table, in this very room, on this very chair, with this very candle. This is usually what my morning writing happens. I wake up, I have my coffee, I light my candle, and I journal. Now, every once in a while, that is not inspiring for me. And when that happens, I think changing up spaces can be really helpful. And so maybe I'll walk to the coffee shop and I'll get a cup of coffee and I'll spend some time sitting there at the coffee shop writing. Something about going outside of the house and being at a public space, like it encourages me to focus on my writing. I think, sometimes people who are working on their computers from home can do the same thing. They'll go to a coffee shop or the library or the park, maybe even, to work on a project, because just getting out of the house can help focus their mind a little bit. And maybe it holds us accountable, because when we're in a public space, if we go and sit at a table and we pull out a journal and a pen and we start writing, then that's what we're there to do. And so to like pull out a phone and start perusing Instagram doesn't feel, it feels like we're breaking the rule a little, and everybody's there watching like, oh, she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing. So just being held accountable in a public space, I think, can be a little bit helpful. Let's see, I think there was another thing. Oh, just also having access to your journal as much as you possibly can. I think for me, my journal is sitting out open right in front of me right now, just because if it's always around, I don't have any excuses. When I'm waiting at a doctor's office, I can pull out my journal and write. If I'm waiting at a coffee shop for my coffee to mate, I can pull out my journal and write. I think it's really easy to do other things like look at our phones. I said this in a video long ago, that replacing that time that we would maybe fill with looking at our cell phones with journaling instead can be really helpful. Now, if there isn't a lot of time, I will say sometimes like a fountain pen can feel a little inconvenient if we have to pull it out of a special pen pouch and unscrew the cap, and that feels a little bit more time consuming. And if we only have 5 minutes, then it's not as productive. And so consider that too. Maybe have a pen that is really quick and easy to pull out when you only have a limited amount of time for your writing session. So that is it. Hopefully still helpful. And go create your spaces and have fun journaling. Bye.